Hi, Nath. How are you? Good to see you again.
Hi.
Hi, that was an incredible mutual check-in we had yesterday in the opening episode of The Greatest Story Never Told. And what's a very bold, almost strange thing to say because we humans, every day, we tell stories all the time. We're great storytellers. And that's all we know is storytellers. Entertainment industry, our media sources, our social media, everything is telling stories and weaving narratives. So how dare you even think that there's the greatest story of all, the story of the Logos? What's on the ground floor of all reality and shaping and making it possible to tell our stories and have all of our communication arts where we are, right? We can't tell the missing story of Logos that's running the show across the planet for millennia from the very start. And that's a very dramatic thing to say. But not what came out in our mutual check, we said there's no point in just continuing naively to tell the story to the public, given that the public space, the media space, is deeply eclipsed in some way from the Logos code and the Logos language level. If you're going to use the Logos language, which is unfamiliar to us at this stage of our linguistic, rational mind processing, the mind where we have, right, is cutting us off from access to a deeper sourceware. And that's really the greatest story, calling us all through the ages in our human evolution to get that Logos code, to come into intimacy with Logos and not be eclipsed from Logos. And if we're eclipsed from Logos, we're in trouble. And we spoke of, our culture is almost in a cultural Titanic, which can sound alarmist, but it's not. To sound the alarm when the house is on fire is a good thing, right? So it's not alarmist, even though it sounds so to people who are in that cutoff from Logos space of storytelling. And so we really opened up as we stood back and said, Nathan, let's check in with each other. What's the block? What's the barrier? What's the blind spot in the public space across the planet, in the human condition? Right? And given what we are able to see in our research, you're in your own journey, my journey as a global philosopher, living in the space of global wisdom and enlightenment and scriptures for the last 2,500 years. For over the last 60 years, I've been living in that space and seeing, wow, these great teachers and scriptures are coming from the source, the Logos pioneers and first responders trying to help humanity end our suffering, our deep existential suffering, and to be liberated and to mature as a species into the LogoSphere, the Logos contact with reality, right? Because we're Logo sapiens, right? And when you say the word reason, that's a Logos. When you're saying we're not tapping the Logos, and yet it's making it possible, and yet we're cut off. We're in a trance, we said, and we've been saying that a long time. And Buddha was saying that, Moses, Krishna, Lao Tzu, all through the ages, our great wisdom keepers are saying, folks, you're in the cave. Socrates, you're in a trance. You're in ignorance. And you brought that up last night. Our human condition is a kind of primal ignoring of the call of Logos across the planet for 2,500 years. And it's become almost willful. It's just some naive ignorance where you can forgive that, okay? But when it's been available for us to make the crossing from privileging our level of coding and literacy and programming, the mindware we're using, and despite the teacher saying, "I'm warning you, it's the source where the mindware we have is malware, and it's deadly in terms of our best interests of surviving and thriving and well-being." And so if that's true, that's a very serious thing to say. And again, we brought all of that up in our opening episode and saying, look, we can't just tell the story the normal way we've been doing it all through for years, and it's been being told on the planet for millennia. We need to stand back, you and I, and we did last time, and said, let's have a check-in with each other and ask why. What is the depth of that blockade that seems to be implanted deeply entrenched in our human stage of Google information and everything we informationize? It's a program. It's a software for the mind that's malware, according to our wisdom traditions. And we brought up the theme that if the essence of wisdom and enlightenment is the call to step back and see the mindware that we're using, whatever codes we're using to make our lives and our world and our experiences and our human condition, we got to see it. And that's where you break the trance. And if we're embedded and you can't see it, you need a trance buster, to open it up so we can see it, because if not, we're going to block everything out. And that's going to create a profound blind spot that can be deadly to our human evolutionary well-being. So the greatest story never told is the Logos call, of the infinite call of the source of reason and the light of reason, the source of being, the source of life, of goodness, of love, of well-being, of reality, calling us in our journey and our development as rational beings. As if we're rational beings and we're cut off from reason, then we better keep going and to tap and come into an intimate I-thou relationship, a communion, intimacy with the Logos. And we're saying that story cannot be told in our normal storytelling and entertainment industries of weaving narratives. It's beyond that. It's a deeper kind of story. It's one you got to live. You've got to live in the first person. And that's what, when Jesus says, I am the way, the Logos in the flesh, according to John, for example, right? In the beginning is the Logos was with God, the Logos was God, and the Logos became flesh. And that example is that Jesus is manifesting the Logos code, the Logos speech. I am the way, the truth, and the life, which is weird to the ordinary ear of where we understand language and how we interpret what we hear from the zone, from the source. So I hope we can, on this second episode, build on that, right? And see, can we break that trance? What can we do to build on our great teachings and all we've done all our lives, you and I, you in your yoga, you in your music and the Awakening Live Arts, Mai as a global philosopher, as a spiritual activist and educator for over 50 years, seeking to advance basic education for everyday humans. What are the baby steps that every human needs to understand in getting the Logos code, the code of all codes, the story of all stories? We need to tap that. That's a call of evolution that we haven't seen clearly in the global space. So what do we need to do to help our brothers and sisters, our loved ones, our family? We're all in the same family. We're all in the human family. But if we're in an adolescent stage of our rational developments and literacy and language power and mind power, and are somehow systematically blocking out the power and the medicine of the Logos teachers, and yet on the ground floor of our everyday lives, we look across the planet. If you look at the American lab, for example, in our cultural space, as great as we are, so to speak, in the USA, as we see ourselves as leaders of the free world, but our democracy seems to be in shambles. And we seem to be in our cultural space smitten with all kinds of pathologies, cultural pathologies, personal, interpersonal, in the culture. Something is not working. What's up with that? So, any thoughts? I just want to pick up that and see, can we go deeper now into what's a trance? Why are we cut off from the source of reason and light and life, which is bliss? Why are we phobic? What is a phobia about going deeper and making a crossing from what's familiar to us in our storytelling, right? And our, as you said last time, control trip, right? What happens if we can open that up? What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, some of my initial thoughts, especially in regards to the word logos, which I over the years learned to understand deeper and now revere as almost like the best possible ecumenical word for the light of we could say the light of reason, but the light of sanity, sense. And what I'm always painfully aware of, as I've told you again and again, because I've been there, is how this is received from the normal everyday. Just think about everyone just living their lives. The word logos never comes up. I mean, even people who know the Bible and Christianity may have this kind of idea of logos, or may have heard it in regards to Socrates, or maybe, like this kind of far off weird. It's a weird sounding word. Let's just be honest. To the everyday mind, it's a weird sounding word. And even if we chose a word that was more accessible or familiar, like let's say enlightenment, which logos is, if we really understand it, is the true essence of enlightenment. It's turning on the lights of the human consciousness to tap the source of understanding, of sense. So anything that makes sense, no matter how small, in one way, shape, or form, is tapping the logos. But what I'm always painfully aware of is how weird it sounds to the everyday mind. And so my job, I feel like, is to, first of all, acknowledge that and help people to see that this is, because what we're going to automatically do is, and this is exactly the issue that we're bringing up, is we automatically privilege the familiarity of not just our own orientation, but in effect what we feel as what is everybody else's orientation to. There is a default setting for the human consciousness to cozy up to and default to an orientation of seeing the world and seeing reality and agreeing on, and of course there's huge disagreements on what are the facts of reality, but in general there's some deep ones that we're all kind of sharing, and we know that unconsciously, subconsciously, preconsciously I think most people feel like they've got a grasp on reality. Like I'm a pretty sane person. I get up in the morning, I make money, I go in my car, I go to work or whatever. I function. There's some things that don't work so well. There's definitely lots of problems in the world, but I think there's an overall sense that the primary reality, more or less, is what people are doing. Yeah, it's messy, it's clunky, but we're getting there. Technology is advancing. We're learning more about the universe. And we used to think the world was flat. Now we know that it's round, and that kind of, okay. We thought the earth was the center. Now we see that the earth is going around the sun, and all those Copernican shifts as we're guided by sense, right? It's what's guiding all that. What allows us to make such a massive shift as to go from the world is flat, which seemed to make sense at first, just from the appearance, to, oh my goodness, the world is round. And now what used to sound outlandish, the world is round, are you kidding me? Now sounds like, wow, that's what makes more sense. What's guiding that? Logos. What's guiding? It's all, any evolution, no matter what field it is. In any possible arena, it's all being guided. What I love about the word logos is it's, again, as I said, ecumenical, potentially as a word that can speak, that can transcend any kind of specific ideology or religion, or even science has to answer to the logos. Any world view. Even if you don't care about worldviews and you could care less about any of this stuff, you still have to answer to the logos. Because why? Because you feel the need to make sense. Everyone feels the need to make sense. And when we say that somebody's not making sense, we say that person is insane, right? There's a command to make sense. And everybody's answering to that all of the time, but within a highly nonsensical matrix. And that's what's hard to understand here, is that when you're talking about the logos and this malware that we have, and we've got to upgrade and upscript to this higher code and all, like that, I can hear how most people are hearing that as just like so out, like just inaccessible, like you can't even touch that. And I feel like my job here is to help people see that, as lofty as it may sound, that's because we're so oriented to thinking that where we are and where we've been is what's primary, meaning what is the norm, what is sane. And so anything that is outside of that, which the call of wisdom is exactly in a way the most alien, if you will, to how we're oriented and situated. The religious call, some of we've all heard, "Thy will be done, not my will." And we've heard there's so many different versions of that, but wisdom is essentially calling us to a higher, and we can say wisdom, we can say reality. Reality, we all, I think, can agree that whatever our personal preferences may be, at the end of the day, we've got to answer to reality. And the reality is like a code word for that which is real beyond our will. That's that which we have to get hip to. We had to, whether we liked it or not, we had to get hip to the fact that the world was round. If we were going to, I was just thinking about how we fly to, I have a friend who just landed in Hawaii. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, wow, that is just unbelievable. We've normalized it. But if we stop and think, this little tiny dot in the middle of the ocean, and because of the logos, because of sense and the command to get hip to reality, we're not doing that. We're having to answer to the laws of reality. And that understanding is also a call of the logos. It's the logos within us that says you've got to get hip to reality. If you want to go to Hawaii, you got to get hip to reality. Okay, that's one example, but like in this ultimate sense, exactly, exactly. If you want to get up and go to the bathroom, you got to answer to the logos. So just to finish the thought, yeah, I want to kind of let me sum up the thought is that the practicality. What do we care about today as modern day humans? What works? What works? Reason science has such a looming sense of superiority in our lives is because it seems to provide the things that work that help me get from A to B. I can get in my car and get from A to B. I can get on my phone and text my friend. I can get on a plane and go to Hawaii. I can, go to the doctor and cure cancer. I can, it works, right? What is that? Pragmatism. We want things to work. What is valuable is what works. Okay. But if we stay in a narrow mind as ignore ants, I was calling it ignorance, but then I used the analogy of the ants in the colony. Each ant in whatever world it's in doing its thing, it's part of a bigger common collective mind that is the ant colony. And I was using that analogy for the human colony that is driven by an ethos, meaning a guy, like there's a motivation to all of it all. And what we're seeing, and when I was saying the Titanic, and we've been saying the Titanic, it's a Titanic kind of motivation and motivational structure. So here we are all humans on the Titanic with our individual. What we care about the most is, okay, me, my life, and the life of those immediately around me, or maybe those, if they're not my family, they're those at which I can work with to make my goals happen. In this narrow-minded kind of just, I got my life, birth, life, death, and this is the amount of time I got, 80, 90, 100 years if I'm lucky, and I'm going to do what I can with that life and then just make sure I, get successful enough to pass that on to my kids so that they can do it and so forth and so on. And we're in a narrow-minded orientation, and that's completely normalized by the colony, the human colony mind that is normalizing it, making it good. But as a whole, even though it seems to make sense in the smaller picture of just me and my life and what I'm doing, and there's a kind of the machine is humming along seemingly, okay, we're all stopping and going at the green lights and the red lights, and we're all, more or less not bumping into each other. The economy's humming. Yeah, it has dips and falls, but everything's going. But there's a sense. There's a deep sense. Here's back to that pragmatics of it. What good is any of your goals if the whole thing is unsustainable, meaning it doesn't make sense? And there's a reason why it's not making sense, because it's cut off from sense. And what we're saying here is that there's that sense, real sense, not myopic, not the world is flat because it seems like it's sense, but, oh my God, we have to honor that the world is round kind of shift. We have to honor that sense is round, so to speak. We have to honor that sense is sense itself, logos, and the call of that, which humans have been sort of like blindly following up until now, with some great minds and thinkers along the way who have articulated it more. Let's be honest, most people are just using sense, which is to say using the logos, to very narrow-minded ends, and that the whole world is sustaining that together. Humanity as a whole is sustaining that together, so it seems like it works. We make that primary, but it's the Titanic. It's not sustainable. So what if we fancy ourselves to be pragmatists? In other words, we want things to work. Well, we have got to see, and what you're saying, this to pass the ball back to you, so you can give us the visual of it and like help us ground this. When we say Titanic, that's a huge big deal. What we're saying, and humanity is not. I'm not saying humanity is at the end of the day the Titanic, but if we don't see the malware, and we don't get humble to the logos, meaning, like it or not, the logos is calling us higher. We've got to upgrade the software. We got to, evict the malware, so to speak. If we don't get that, then anything we try to do, no matter how good the intentions are, is still part of making the whole thing go down. It's all part of the unsustainability. So that's how I just want to kind of connect what you're saying for the people to feel. I want you to feel like, what good is it? Anything we're doing, like all the as much as it seems, if we stay in the narrow-minded mindset, then it's like, oh yeah, like I'm good. But if we're asking you to zoom out and see, no, you're not. I'm sorry. It's like we may not like that, but it's too bad. It's not about what we like anymore. That's the nature of this offering. It's not about what we like or feel like facing. We have got to face this or we're going down. We are going down. We know it. We feel it. And ignoring and pretending like everything's hunky-dory is not changing that fact. But the good news is we're not starting from scratch on the real solution. And we can't see the real solution if we don't step back from what's causing all of this. And that's where the malware comes in. The malware is the Titanic. And so the humanity, the human body as a whole, if it does not address this malware that's installed in all of us and instilled in all of us, then we're done for. It's that simple. That's the nature of our work. So we're not being alarmist, but we're being alarms. We're sounding the alarm here. So those are my initial thoughts, and I want you to just, having said that and having sort of grounded the pragmatic value of what this is that we're doing, I think that maybe even though you've done it so many times and it's out there, countless videos, countless presentations, and I have too, I feel like setting this context of calling out the elephant in the room, which is that, guys, everybody stop. There's an elephant in the room. There's an elephant on the planet and nobody wants to talk about it. This is that elephant. And I just want to make that really painfully clear, blissfully clear. There is something that no one is talking about, and we are. And we're asking you to stop everything for a moment and just listen to what my dad is about to show us and present and bring through in this light of urgency. So that's my thought.
Very helpful, Nathan. You so many things came out in what you said about the logos and making sense, real sense, and that yet there's a malware and a barrier that is normalized. And as you rightly point out, as in my own journey over the last 60 years as a global philosopher, first philosopher, what is first philosophy? It's a science of getting to what's first and what's primary, and that's the logos. And that's really the barrier, that we don't understand that first, to get to what's first, the logos, and the way you're speaking about it correctly, right? And when you say it's ecumenical and you use the word logos, it's not logos the way we usually would say, oh, it's a Greek word for reason, and the light of reason and rationality and logic and so forth. And so forth, but we're using it in a deeper space. So let me respond, because I'm passionate about this with you, Nath. We've got to find a way to bring to the public. When you say we're on the Titanic, I want to try and show why, because people are not going to get that. Or you say, oh, there's malware. I said, what do you mean? We're doing really well. Look at the internet. Look at social media. Look at the media, and we're great storytellers. Right? And there's no limit to how we can change our story and tell a different story. How do you mean the greatest story never told? Why can't we tell it? Right? And you're pointing to that. And that's been what my work publicly as a philosopher, first philosopher, that's the word. I'd like people to just hear that word, first philosophy. A word from Aristotle, but Buddha is first philosophy. Moses is first philosophy. Jesus is first philosophy. Right? You don't think of, oh, Jesus is philosophy. Yeah, first philosophy. Why? Because Jesus is trying to get people, humans, to tap what is first, come closer to God. And the Christ is the transitional crossing that brings us to get the Logos code in the flesh, when Jesus, as John says in the beginning, is the Logos, and goes from the Hebraic to the Hellenistic Greek, to use that word, to try to open up the space across borders. Why? Because what is first is beyond any local story or ideology or technology. It requires a deeper logos, a logic, a science, first science. So I'd like to, for you and I right now, to focus, I'd like to do a PowerPoint for 5 minutes to put up visually what you've said and what I've been saying, and then let's try to massage it together and see if we can help. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just realized to further strengthen what was guiding me to say everything that I said was that in terms of the pragmatics and the sustainability of, and I don't want to say to sustain the Titanic, right? Sustainability means to get with, I'm thinking about, just to bring it home again, those of you who care about the planet and the environment and see that there is a human caused, domino effect that's actually it's backlashing on us. Nature is backlashing in the sense of just the science of it, the physics of it. It's another example of whether or not we like it or want to vote for it or believe in it or not. It's happening, right? Like that. And what is that principle? It's that there's a principle that reality is operating on that we are bastardized from. We're clearly out of sync with it. And that command to upgrade. I was just thinking about that aspect of it, and that if we don't understand that there is when we say malware, to understand that our consciousness is governed, everything we see, feel, experience is governed by a way of thinking, ways of thinking. Everything we do there's a condition that makes any of our thinking and thought processes possible. But that's hiding out behind our vision. Then we're not able. Then anything we do is going to be coming from that same malfunctioning. That's where we're bastardized. The bastardizing from the flow of reality and this higher code is coming from what you're about to show. And I just wanted to say that again.
Thank you. That's great, Nathan. So I'd like to just, in the spirit of summing up what you and I have been collaborating with and what I've been presenting for decades as a breakthrough to the Logos code. My books, my publications, my spiritual activism, my rational activism, right? My political attempt to bring education in the global Logos space, Logos code. We need to get the Logos code, people, all of us across the planet, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's the human code. Because if we see ourselves with the lens of the malware, with the technology and the mental programming of the malware, we're going to not get a clear vision of who we are as Logos kids, right? So I'm going to just sum up in the hologram. Think of this not as a diagram, but a hologram. And so here's the greatest story never told, right here. This is it, right here, right? And this infinite sign in Logos. That is the ground floor. That's what's first. But what is first? The Logos. Just use a name. You could put Om, you could put Yahweh, you could put Allah, you could put the Brahman, you could put Tao, you could put different great cultures and visionaries have used their language to name what's first. What's first? Infinite. Here it is. But you can't state in a low way to really get into the opening up of the infinite source. This is the source field. And anything that would ever appear at all across the planet, through the ages, in any culture, any narrative, any vision, any experience is going to be situated within the Logos. It can't be outside of it. It's the infinite space. So I'm going to go very quickly now. So once you get, this is first. This is the first. This is getting to the home base. The ground floor. This is the ground floor. This is the foundation. This is the Logos. All the God names, God, Yahweh, Allah, Christ, Buddha, they're all coming from the Logos. Nothing can usurp or step outside and not be source.
Science. Yeah.
Everything. All science, arts, all the art forms, music, dance, everything is in the Logosphere. All of our lives. So here it is. So in the hologram, this is a hologram. And this is the greatest story never told, because here's where we usually tell our stories, right? I'm creating a space, the screen, and here is the person, the viewer, the people. And so this part of the hologram is that however long it took in our evolution to arrive in this space of the thinker having a place to think and have experience and process our world and have a language and reason and logic and technology and emotions and feelings and all of the arts and everything. It's in this space. Okay? And we don't have to give any name to it, but the way it usually is broken out is that we have things and they have their properties, and the properties belong to the things, and we, the thinker, this is our psychic consciousness. This is consciousness, the conscious thinker. The viewer, the experiencer, is using her lens. We have a lens to process reality. This is the processing plant right? This is where our culture and our life and our reason and our making sense, we make sense. If we say sun is shining, or the banana is yellow, or persons are sacred, or whatever we say, we're making our information. This is information space. And it's a big breakthrough. We're tapping the logos at this level, however long it took to arrive here. And here's what we don't really see, is the dynamics and law of this is a mental program, right? And we're able, because here's a red mark. That's the red zone. The red zone is a code. This is a code, right? That we're living in and making our lives and our experiences in the red zone. But the red zone has an effect of creating a barrier from where we are, right? And so it's self-privilege. When we're living in this space, we can't see the red zone. That's the program, the code, the grammar of Logos at this stage of development, however long it took, across the planet, equal opportunity, where we have storytelling and narratives and information and processing our experience. This is an experience-making, world-making, life-making, religion-making, arts and sciences, everything going on in this it's a technology of processing reality, right? So this has its logos. We have our logos, right? It's our rationality. It's a rational code. And there's a law that governs this. And we don't have to go into that right now. But there's a basic, powerful law that governs and makes it possible to have information Google space, Google life, Google feelings, all of our experience, all our narratives, all our religions, all our arts. We're doing science here in the rational space. This is reason. So this single bracket, this red stroke, call it single bracket mind code. But our great teachers across the planet, the call of Logos, who are the first responders who are listening to the call of the infinite. This is all important what I'm saying now. The Logos being infinite is infinitely one. This is your point about sense. If Logos is the light of reason, the infinite light, and it's infinite, the infinite can't be multiple. Because it's infinite, it's infinitely united. And it's the ground of all possible. It's the source of all worlds, all narratives, all scriptures, all religions, all God names, all anti-God names, all ideologies. Atheism, theism, deism, pantheism, monism, dualism, all the isms are going on here using this language. And this is what makes it possible to have Google space and Google information and narratives and stories. And we tell our stories and have our entertainment industries and all of it. We can tell stories, fictions, facts, all of that in this space. But what this does, because of the law that rules this, which is A is A. There are units. A is A. You don't even have to get into this. But the point I'm making is that when you're living in this red zone space, we name things and we call them out and we have content. The thinker here, the psyche here, I should use a different color for where we are. This is our mental space, is the thinker. We the people, right? It could be not just only individual thinkers, consciousness, how we use our reason to make sense of the world. This is where we make sense, and this is the sense maker. And we make sense, and we have a different lens. Why? Why do I put a lens? Because if I'm a biblical world, and God creates the universe, my world will show up in the biblical. If I'm a Big Bang scientist, and it's a Big Bang, we'll get a different narrative. So you change your lens, you change your world. If a monism, theism, deism, all of these different, across the planet, this technology that we're marking with the red code, the single bracket, right, is playing out information which is amazing. We're tapping the logos and making sense at this level. But our great teachers are listening and calling out that there's a deeper way to make sense. Why? Because the sense maker is the infinite unified force. That's the unum. Unum. But what does that mean? This is very important, right? In my own journey of 50, 60 years, it took me so long to listen to these great teachers.
What does that say? That says unum?
Unum, yes.
Okay.
Unity. U-N-U-M. Let me write it again. U-N-U-M. Unum. Pluribus. Plural, multiple. This is all important. Multiplicity and unity cannot be divorced when you get into the logos. The sense maker, the source of sense, the foundation of being, and this is reality. Logos is reality. right? And all our God names and infinite names come from this logos, the name of all names, the story of all stories. And if we try to tell the logos story, the blue zone is making all evolution possible. Anything that goes on in our human dramas and politics and education and love life, all our life, right? It could not be without the unifying force, the sort of the glue, the energy, the unifying, infinite unity. That's unum. There's the infinite. Everything about it is infinite, infinitely connected, infinitely one. And what does that mean? Diversity, plurality, multiplicity is already inscribed within the unum. It's unum pluribus. It's one name. So any dot in this place is going to be unum pluribus. That's a very powerful place and our great teachers are saying, right? For Jesus, unless you die, you can't be born. At the crossing of the Christ, for example, Moses at the burning bush is here. And to bring the laws of God, the law of Yahweh and the Logos down to the people, right? What happens when you cross into here, we can't keep putting it in our red zone first. That's the mindware we have, our cultureware, our mindware, our experience, our self, right?
Just
That's
to
how we make ourselves.
Just to interject real quick, because you say that's a very different kind of dot. So I'd maybe put a single bracket dot down below and under, just to, for contrast's sake, and because I want people to see that.
Here's a single bracket.
Right.
Any word. Here's a point. Any single bracket word X here in this space is not the same as double bracket X word. Take any word. Time. Space. I am. Right. Every word in our linguistic language power at this stage, single bracket words have a double bracket deeper source. And our great teachers are seeing that. So I here, any dot here, right? So take it, time, single bracket time. So past, that's one. Present, that's passing. Future, not yet. Everything gets, again, a label, a dot, a name. It separates, it's a fragmenter. The single bracket code, great as it is to give us information and separate the thinker from what you think, the experiencer from what you experience, the content, the subject who's thinking, and the object of thought, it objectifies. So here's another important line to think about. There is a line between experience and what we experience. And that's the object. And that's objectification. This is a very important one I'm now bringing out, as you see, because the red zone technology, as great as it is, equal opportunity for all humans across the planet, all cultures, all worlds, all religions, all arts and sciences, all education. Using this, it objectifies whether we like it or not. And we have a lens that we could use and change our stories. And the diverse multicultural, the multi-narratives and scriptures and cultures and worlds. And there's no limit to how many different ideologies and narratives you can come up with in this space, right? They're all here under the same code. That's the malware. And when you're in here processing, you can't see the single bracket. You need to somehow step back and break the trance of the single. That's where the trance is. The trance is to be embedded within the single bracket mind operating code of grammar or logic or mindware, right? That makes it possible to have all of this great stuff, right? But then the kickback is that when you're lodged in here, as we all are across the planet, and we don't know how to move into the deeper word process, into the logos, right? And our great teachers are calling us, folks, we gotta migrate, we gotta grow, we gotta evolve from this adolescent stage of storytelling and language making and literacy and sciencing and knowing and feeling and being and loving and war and violence that's going on in the red zone, right? And to come into the place of I, thou. That's really the great. This arrow, to go from the single bracket life and word and rationality to double bracket. So if you go into double bracket time, which is a monumental move to single bracket time that gets fragmented into integral time, holistic time in the LogoSphere. This is a LogoSphere. All of this red zone knob is in the LogoSphere. All of our suffering, all of our breakdowns, all of our depression, all of our elation, all of our manic, it's all going on here, and it couldn't go on without the support and funding from the double bracket. Nothing could connect. So if we make links here, these links come from the linker. the source linker, which is what? The infinite unita, the unimplorable power of reality.
Connectivity.
The blue zone is real.
Connection. Sense. Connection.
That's your point about sense. Your point you're making about
Yeah.
the origin of rationality, sense, sanity, reality, the ground floor of reality, the source of being. This is the blue zone, but the red zone, great as it is in our journey, for 2,500 years, let's say, we've been still, but all the call of the Logos, the call to rise to a deeper integral code, right? The double bracket words, where I and the other are infinitely connected. This is the unum pluribus space. The law is not A is A that divides, but every A is A, every X is X. That's the law. And that's what we're not getting. And this is that's the Titanic, you know. So the point I'm making is that what we've been saying, to sum up in this hologram, here's the story. And we couldn't tell it until we saw it and called out the code. Because when we're immersed here, we can't see the code. If you can't see the code, then all of this gets pulled into the same place. This Logos gets pulled down here. God gets pulled down here. Christ gets pulled down here. Yoga gets pulled down here. Allah gets pulled down here. Why? Because this is what dominates our processing of reality and language and scripture reading. This is how we make sense, right? In this red zone, it makes it possible to have this Google space. We're in Google space, which is what? Lego land, Lego pieces, right? Every Lego. Lego is a unit, but a Logos unit here. A unit here is connected with everything else. That's what we've got to get. The literacy of handling this software, not redware, but software, Logosware. It's a deeper code, the original source code. And the journey of wisdom and first philosophy is we need to respond to the call of the first. Logos is calling us, and we're trying to get it here. And the great teacher says, no, you got to let this go. You've got to surrender it. You've got to surrender to Allah. You've got to die to be born again. You've got to leave the cave, Socrates, and come into the Logos, into the light, the source. Why? Because that's who we are. Because the way we see ourselves here, what is a human here? Who am I? To do it here in this informationized space is deforming our more clear when we say I am. The I am is leaving the red zone and getting into the zone of the primary call of Logos, intimacy with Logos, which is I and thou. This is all important. When one crosses out of the red zone into the source, when we're surfing the field of connectivity, for real, the unum pluribus space. Imagine USA, which is not unum del pluribus, but unum is pluribus. Diverse, infinite diversity. Every point, right, is unique and yet interconnected. We can't process that technology and science here. And yet that's ethics. I and thou, the other, you and the other are interconnected unbreakably when we tap. So when we say one nation, under Logos, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all and well-being, life, liberty, it's here. This is divided and divisive and fragmenting and pulverizing, and everything is separated out. And I and you becomes I and it. So to objectify is to treat it, whatever it is, as an it, an object, an objectification. That's dehumanizing. And that's where we're living. And if we look across the cultures right now, that's what we're saying is Titanic. Why? Because here's the last point I'll make now, then I'll throw it back to you. Right? This is summing up this story. Could not be told here. The greatest story, the Logos, on the ground floor, what is first, which is infinitely unified in diversity, the source of reason and light and love and well-being and ethics, everything grand is right here. And we are kids of Logos. Not Lego, but Logos. We're not Lego sapiens, but Logos kids, which means what? We're connected. Not only with each other and with ourselves, mind and body, space and time, I and you, one and many, right? Subjective and objective. It gets connected in the infinite. That's deep sense. And it's language, it's a logic, it's a code, it's science, it's first science. That's first philosophy. That's wisdom. And if our great wisdom teachers knew that wisdom is not here, wisdom is stepping back from being immersed within what cuts us off from wisdom, the red zone, it eclipses and alienates our journey to a deeper way to be human. And that's wisdom. So any wisdom teacher, any enlightenment teacher, any scripture call out to the infinite, responding to the infinite, that doesn't somehow find a way to bring about the code here that blocks it, is not genuine wisdom. And we have to ask, when we get an acquaintance with this untold story, and you can't tell the story when you're immersed here, you've got to see the code. You've got to have a code moment that says, well, you've got to step back and say, wow, are we living in the red zone? And our great teachers, Jesus was actually here, and Buddha was here, and Moses, and Jesus, and Krishna, and Lao Tzu, on and on, right? The call to surrender and rise higher, right? That's our evolutionary journey. So if you try to tell the evolutionary story within the red zone, you're missing the real deeper evolutionary story, which is the call of Logos. Why is it? Because it's infinite. So what? Everything comes from it and is sourced by it and couldn't be without it. But when you're here, you can't see that and you can't honor that. So it's a kind of built-in plagiarism and narcissism that comes from being immersed within good people, immersed within the red zone without being able to see it and realize it. Really, we'll go to self-privileging and privileging this red code above the blue code. That's a kind of ontological as being. Logos is being. It's reality. It's connectivity. It's infinite. It's infinitely one. And everything that will go on in existence couldn't be without the sourcing in the infinite. You can't step outside of that. It's all funded by it, but we can't see it or honor it. And the great call is honor what's first. So what we're asking now, I'm sorry it took me that long. I thought I would do it in 5 minutes, but I was trying to crystallize 2,500 years of the call of Logos in our evolutionary journey in this hologram. Here's a story that cannot be told in our normal storytelling. And here's the malware. And here's the sourceware that is I and thou, which is ethics and nature. When you see reality in the double bracket lens, the global lens of Logos, which is with us because why? We are kids of Logos, but we're cut off from our source here. And if we can't see that, and we try to solve all our activism, right, and political shifts and change our story. If you say change your story, change your life, yeah, you can change here. But this change from here to here is the change that matters. And that's where we're hitting a barrier with humans. I wonder if you have any observations. So this is an attempt now to kind of capture what you've just said.
Yeah. And it's beautiful the way it's becoming clear, because again, one of the main things we're calling out is the trance, but the trance has a willful ignorance, not ignorance, but ignorance. In other words, there is a phobia of exactly what you're talking about. And I realized what I was trying to say earlier, but kind of still fell short, is when we're used to the red zone, it doesn't matter if it's dysfunctional. We take that as primary, and therefore we can only hear what you're saying and what we've been saying as this kind of out there sort of thing. I want to just bring in the thought that actually what we've been calling normal is what is in fact out there. Out of where? Out of reality, out of sanity, out of sense. And we've made it primary. And to let that, so the word objectification or an objectify is all important. When I asked for you to put the single bracket dot, what's the difference between a double bracket dot and a single bracket dot? Any X, a double bracket person and a single bracket person. What is the actual difference? Well, in the single bracket code, it's objectified. It's cut off. If take an atom, for example, based on our very logic of things being units, separate units with boundaries that make them their own thing, existing on their own. Well, by that very logic, no two atoms could connect. You couldn't have H2O based on the logic that we think governs everything. A is A. Everything is a unit. Everything is a thing. Everything is an object. In fact, there are no objects the way we think of it. Because if there were objects, nothing actually could connect. It'd be impossible. How could two atoms connect across space if they're two separate things? In other words, it's like the connectivity of reality is so blatantly obvious and in our faces, it points back to us. What are we afraid of? Why don't we acknowledge that? What is the phobia? Because if you open up to the reality here, and this is what I'm saying, what we're calling out there, the Logos isn't out there. We're the ones that are out there from that, which is sense. We use it. It's almost like like the way we frack the earth for oil. So, hey, there's oil under the earth. We need that. I'm going to take it. Crunk. It doesn't matter if it's causing earthquakes or toxicity in the water, whatever. We want it. We need it. We take it. Think of our mind, this space where our minds are like frack mines. We're always fracking the logos, but then going, what logos? What logos? I don't see any logos. You see any logos? And we're tapping the connectivity in order to have all this electricity and internet and everything that we have. We're constantly tapping the connectivity, and yet going, what connectivity? There's no connectivity. It's all stuff. It's all stardust to us. What are you talking about? It's blatant. We're blowing the whistle on this blatant contradiction that we are living. And to bring it back to the greatest story never told, this is it. We can't tell it. And the reason we want to tell it, which is a single bracket code technology, we want to tell the story because it keeps it at arm's length. It keeps reality objectified and on our terms, so we can power trip on it and control it and narrate it and direct it. At the heart of this, we're talking about on a choice of humanity as a whole, and every single individual has to face exactly what I'm saying right now, is that the choice is not a choice within the single bracket of what am I going to do with my life and da-da-da-da. No, it's the choice of choice itself. Am I going to have single bracket choice, objectified choice in choosing in life? Or am I going to dare to let that control trip go? Is humanity going to let that control trip go? Because if it doesn't, it's done for. And rise into, it's not a foreign software. Logos is not a foreign software. It's the original software. We're getting original. We've been foreign to it, made the foreign primary. And this inversion, and so just to really zero right in on that phobia point, why are we so resistant? Because reality, this greatest story never told, is the greatest story lived. And that scares the bejesus off of us, not consciously, but we sort of unconsciously know when the foundation of that single bracket, which is as insidious and objectifying and life-robbing as it is, it's cozy, it's familiar, and it keeps us in a space of control, which we have learned to feel as a sense of security. Our sense of security is actually what's making us insecure, because the only way to be truly secure is to be secured in the logos, to be secured in sense, sanity, reason, being. And there is no security that we can synthesize here. So we're desperately insecure underneath it all. We don't know why, and we're running ourselves ragged and into the ground and dying from trying to find security in the single bracket space. And yet we want to hold on to this, because to let that power trip go and open up to the voltage of the logos, which is the life force, which is vitality, everything we want is there. But there's a catch. You got to be willing to let go of the control trip. So I want to just connect the dot there to the greatest story never told. It has to be the greatest story lived, and all of us have to live it. But that's a high voltage and scary thing. It's almost safer to have it on the screen, on the computer screen, on the movie screen, on the TV screen, on the phone screen. We want to keep it objectified and out there. Then we can talk about it, and we can tell about it, and we can report it. But to live it, to be it, that's what I would suggest in response to what you've just shared and brought. That's why we're so scared. That's the trance it's not like we have to be in the trance. It's cozier in a way. Based on what we're used to, it's cozier. And to really do what we're suggesting, I think, is a very, very powerful, earth-shaking, life foundation-shaking, in life inverting move to make. And that's where the phobia comes in. I really do think that's what it is.
Right. And whatever phobias, we have psychological phobias, but existential ontological phobia, right? What you're saying was so important that when we are here, we privilege the red zone, but in fact, the red zone is derivative. And if we try to get the first narratives, our scriptures, our enlightenment teachers, or speaking from the logos and seeking to tap this, and we download it here into our informationized Google space and informationize our wisdom and enlightenment and spirituality and politics and love life and all so forth, we don't realize that by objectifying it, right, we're killing it. So in the biblical state, what is sin? It's the red zone. Why? Because it cuts us off from source. What is samsara in the East? It is a repeating boredom of repetitional ad infinitum, lifetime after lifetime, cut off from Om, cut off from Brahman, cut off from the unified, right? And therefore, in the fragmented, dualistic, so to speak, everything is chopped, and shredded. Here, we're using a mindware. It's malware because it chops and breaks things apart, fragmented, when in fact, reality is a flow, is a zone. It's infinitely interconnected. All of our diverse narratives are sourced in the same source. And our political evolutionary journey is to go from this malware that we're not yet seeing, and we are in FOMO, we're cuddled up to each other, where all of our diverse stories, all of our diverse ideologies are here. And we can cluster in groups, and those are our homies. And we have FOMO, fear of missing out, so we join in. The call to conform to a norm of a story that we share. Why? Because it's truth in numbers. Why? Because Logos is the source of truth. But here, single bracket truth, right, is mind-made. We make it, right, according to our agenda. So our belief system, I believe on my terms. What seems true to me, I choose. It's my opinion. So here we have opinion. This is opinion. This is truth. This is the source. So even science and a community of investigators using empirical methods of experience here in checking the data of nature and so forth here, right, is not the same as science, which is a direct encounter with nature here. It's interconnected. So the LogoSphere, reality on the ground floor, is a profound interconnected flow of connectivity. So if you say all is connected here, it's not the same as connectivity here.
But connectivity down below wouldn't work without connectivity. That's why I'm saying fracking. We're stealing from connectivity itself to do connections on our terms, to do sense on our terms.
That's the point. That's the point. That's why it's this kind of built-in plagiarism. The red zone, by not honoring the source of all connectivity, of the Logos that makes sense. Sense is connectivity. We have artificial sense here. This is artificial intelligence. Single bracket reason, single bracket Logos, single bracket language and literacy and meaning and knowing here, great as it is, right? And having the facts and truth here is still not grounded in the source of truth. You couldn't have the main point. You could not have this level of human development, rational development, literacy, language, emotional, spiritual, religious development, right? Without the code, the program that makes it possible to have Google Space and to have a Google Life. And great as it is, to download the fire of Logos here on our terms, right? If we're cut off, that's what this line is, from tapping and being in the zone, being in the Christ, being in the Moses law, being in the Allah, being in the Buddha, being in the Rumi, being all of these yoga. Yoga is here, not here. So you could do yoga here. You could do Jesus here. You could follow the laws of Moses here, which came from the burning bush of Yahweh. You could be a Muslim here and put Allah first. You know, you could name your ultimate higher. You've got lower reality and higher reality, right? Here too. But Allah here is not Allah. Yahweh is not Yahweh. Moses here is not Moses. Jesus is not Jesus. Buddha is not Buddha. It's huge and astounding, because these first thinkers and pioneers and first responders were responding to the first, which is the infinite source, which is what? Infinitely unum pluribus. That's amazing. It's not separate units. There are no separate items, right? When Adam and Eve fell from grace, right, they became separated, right? And technology was developed and launched that was cut off from the deeper literacy of the Logos. And nothing, that's the malware of reality. And why are we scared? And all the teachers know there's a great phobia. That's why I just gave another follow-up to sum all of this up. In the greatest story never told. How many times have it been shown that every word we use has a deeper analog? But it's not here and separate, they're all together. Every X is X. I am I. And just to scratch this red out, which is what sounds so simple, that's a hologram that's the journey of spirituality and wisdom and rational maturation. To not privilege the red, but to realize I don't have to go. It's not a matter of going from here to there. It's already together. So to step out of privileging the single brackets shows that you're already on home grounds. This red zone is being held in the womb of infinite logos. And to step out of privileging the single bracket malware, we are already, it's right here too. It's not that we have to go from here to there. It's right where we are. Be here now.
And if you look at it, in the, in terms of now look at all the calamities and collisions and catastrophes and wars and battles and political rivalries and everything in every single realm, from the personal to the global. It's all traces back to this now. We can see, because why? Because each participant, either an I or a we, under the sway and tyranny of that single bracket code, the objectifying code, what ends up being is who owns reality. It can only turn into a battle for supremacy in that realm. Who's running the narrative? Who's running? Because since there is no common narrative, since there's no common word, it's like the real showdown here is: are we going to finally get hip? Because whether or not we do, it's the reality. Are we going to get humble to reason, or are we going to continue to insist that reason serve us? And that's the all important flip there, because if we don't get humble to reason, that's where the phobia comes to, the letting go, the die before you die, all of the deep calls, because it's at the deepest possible level. Then there will be no world peace. There will be no personal peace. There will be no peace. There can't be peace if we continue to avoid. And I want to say that's ignorance is now, at this point, from this point forward, it's a choice to stay in the power trip, ignore the code issue, stay as an objectifier and as someone who's objectified, and to continue to feed and fuel the whole self-destruction that is inevitable if we don't upgrade to the original sense, original software, sourceware. If we don't upgrade, we're done. And that's just not up for debate. It's just the way it is.
So now that I think we've taken some time here, and let this sink in. This is really for us to kind of go back and forth with each other to say, what is a malware, or what is a Titanic, and maybe the next gather, when we come together in the next third movement of this greatest story never told. This is the greatest story never told, because storytelling going on here, you can't tell this story in this hologram in this storytelling place of narrative here. Narratives here that we are so powerful and familiar with, our narratives on our terms, right, is not yet going to narratology, the narrative of the source word. And that source story. And why is that the greatest story? Because the greatest story is not in here. This is the greatest story. Why? Because the greatest is what is first. The infinite source of all. Imagine the story of all stories, the story behind all stories, the story that makes this level of storytelling possible, and this level of rational life, and this level of literacy and making sense, and knowledge, and science, and arts, and technology, and education, all here, love life, everything here, all of our psychological life in this red zone. Right? Across the planet, equal opportunity for all humans. Humans here must have the education to rise into the double bracket literacy of I, thou. Watch this what? It comes from the unum pluribus. I and the other are not split. You can't objectify the other. I and the thou is sacred. This is sacred. This is land of sacred logos. And it's right here. It's right here. So we don't have to leave it. If we can discover our sacred self with us right now, right? It's not that we are indeed, we're experiencing being alienated in the malware, but the journey from here to there is the journey from here to here.
Yeah, and it's not an adding the logos code. It's a dropping the blinders. It's a letting go rather than adding, another thing. It's the dropping. It's the letting go of the malware. See, to see it is to let it go. It's to break the trance is to become free people.
That's right. That's right. You know what I think we should do next time, Nathan, in our attempt to really reflect on the story, the untold, but ever told, because logos is always happening. The infinite force is always presiding, whether we see it or not. And even if we don't see it, we're living from it. We couldn't live without it. So the greatest story, the logos story of evolution, right? The let there be light story, so to speak, the Big Bang story. This is where the Big Bang's going to happen, right? In the Logos, the declaration that brings all worlds and realities and all galaxies all within the space. And so this, I think what we need to do when we talk about the malware is next time, see if we can go and show, bring out and rehearse between us, but for others to get it. If we realize that the red zone is the primary scientific cause of a vast range of personal and cultural and collective dysfunctions across the planet in the human condition is caused by the red zone. That is new. That has not been seen. We need to show, when you say the Titanic, people won't understand that. What do you mean the Titanic, right? When you say, for example, take the USA, right? If the USA is living in the red zone, and we don't even know it, and our Democrats and Republicans and independents and all, and 250 years of we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're endowed by the source, we're enabled with rights and human rights and so forth, and we're living here, USA, for example, but we're living in this separated, fragmented, where unity is split from diversity, and we're a multicultural society, but we're one nation under source individual in a quest of a more perfect union. Here's a union. A more perfect union is going into the ecumenical space of Logos, where all of our diverse plurality of narratives and ideologies are born and generated here, but they're sourced. And if we can rise together as a people, when Martin Luther King said, "I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the other side. I may not get there with you, but we're going to get there one day." Well, that's what Jesus is saying. That's what Buddha is saying. That's what Krishna is saying. Our great teachers, we've got to get there. So I think what would help next time to deepen this, if we could help people really see, because we're good people. We're not choosing sides, because wherever you are here, right, we're good people because we are Logos kids, all of us. And the great teachers knew that what's the greatest medicine evolutionary is to really tap the Logos. So that's scary. It's scary.
In an awesome way. In an awesome way.
It's scary. It's awesome. Because what do we get here in our journey in migration and evolution as a species to our maturation as Logos sapiens is bliss, it's love, it's connectivity, it's we live the ethics. We're living in sacred space. Everything is interconnected.
Happiness,
technology,
fulfillment, meaning, purpose.
That's it. That's right.
Freedom from guilt and shame and depression and being haunted by ourselves and our lives and all that stuff. I mean, we're used to it down in this red zone, and we just think it's the way it is. But man, what we're talking about is to let that go is scary, but in a thrilling, liberating, freeing, thank goodness sort of way.
We're terrified of the possibility of nirvana, of bliss. When you say that heaven is at hand, the kingdom of Logos is at hand.
It's too good to be true. Whatever. That's just...
No, it can't be without it. We're blocking it. It's right here. Yeah. Right? And it's terrifying because we've got to let go of our version of reality and all our diverse versions, all of our stories. It's my belief, it's my judgment, it's my opinion.
But not letting go, but you're not letting go of your reality. You're actually gaining what you were really after the whole time. Mistakenly thinking you had to really fight for your reality, but is actually blocking you from your reality.
That's exactly right. Which is what really.
I just want to be clear about that, so people don't think.
That's right. Well, if you could get out of your way, step back, and surrender, and not privilege the red version of yourself, then you're already right who you are. Yourself is right here, but we're fighting it. And what I'd like to do in the next reflection now, because what we're focusing on here, you and I have agreed, we've got to help people find a way to see the malware, see the red zone, see that it's a Titanic, and to see that we're in suffering. And we couldn't see it while we're in it because we need a deeper science, a deeper source medical. So the Logos lens opens up. The Unum lens, wow, that's medical ontology. Source science, first science, gives us a whole new, deeper diagnostic, right? When you can step back out of the red zone that blocks the diagnostic, and you can step step back from seeing here to seeing here and say, whoa, no wonder we're fragmented. No wonder my love life is not working. No wonder I feel a split between my mind and my body and myself and myself. And I feel bipolar and fragmented and distracted and empty. I feel existentially empty even though I tried to find the meaning, as you said at the beginning. I want a meaningful life. I want a valuable life. I want to live to the highest. But here we can't. We're colonized by the malware of our evolutionary development to an adolescent form of reason and literacy and human processing and self-making and experience making. There's a deeper way to experience the empirical, the sacredness of the flow of being in the zone. And that's really what we're seeking to help people see and realize. So can we just focus on that for next time? Maybe we'll try to show in some more detail why the red zone leads to wide-ranging personal and cultural fragmentation and pathologies.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's a deeper diagnostic. That's a Titanic.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right. Wow, that's a workout. Thanks, Nav.
Yeah. Sure thing.
So let's just take a break and conclude this. You moved well. You responded very well to the questions I posed and the challenges. So I'd like to continue this next time and go deeper. Thank you so much, Nav.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Welcome. It's a pleasure.
All right.